and this flight has now been delayed for 5 days, and all the passengers from the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday flight are also waiting. The Tuesday flight is due to come in the next hour or so, but you probably have about a 5-day wait. What's the longest you've had to wait for a plane or train delay? After being in Siberia with Aeroflot back in the early 1990s, I have no longer complained about train delays ever since. So it was at the end of the summer of 1993. I just spent 8 months working as an aid worker, my first aid job in the Ural Mountains and then down in the Caucasus. And as I explained in the last chapter, I'd been down doing a survey in Yerevan in Armenia on a pilot project for giving out heating stoves and kerosene for pensioners who were literally freezing in their apartments and had nothing to cook with. And the survey I did, we found on the first day 10 of the 33 people we went to interview had actually died in the previous 3 months. And so it was decided to rapidly expand the programme to try and get more assistance into as many pensioners as possible. The only stove factory that could deliver 10,000 stoves in a short time was in Irkutsk in Siberia, which is very close to the shores of the magical Lake Baikal. And I somehow managed to persuade my bosses that the best person to take the meeting would be me, because I'd never been to Lake Baikal. I managed to organise the meeting on a Friday morning, which left me the whole weekend in Lake Baikal, and I was feeling quite pleased with myself. The meeting went well on Friday morning, and then I had the whole of Friday and Saturday out on the lake, and it was truly a magical experience. And if you ever get the opportunity, I thoroughly recommend it. And I booked my flight back to Yekaterinburg from Irkutsk with Aeroflot on the Sunday morning. Now, flying Aeroflot back in the 90s, and maybe it's the same today, was an absolute lottery. It was very rare that a plane would go on time. Usually it was an hour or 2 hours, 3-4 hours perhaps late. I mean, that was standard. And so I thought the flight was in the morning, so I got there in the morning expecting to wait for a couple of hours and then to be back in Yekaterinburg. And then I was leaving 2 days later for Manchester to go back to university, so that was the end of my time in Russia for that time. And so when I got to the airport, I saw that I went to check in and I was told that the plane was delayed. I wasn't too upset about that because I was kind of expecting it. And I said, do you have any information as perhaps when the plane might be going? And they said, well, the plane will go after the previous planes which are delayed have gone. And this flight has now been delayed for 5 days. And all the passengers from the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday flight are also waiting. The Tuesday flight is due to come in the next hour or so that will be Tuesday's done, but you probably have about a 5-day wait minimum until the flight will go, which obviously wasn't ideal, and this would mean that I would miss my flight back to the UK and the start of university and a whole host of other problems. And so I sat there at Irkutsk airport, which is not known as the most luxurious in the world, and I was trying to assess my options, and 5 days living in Irkutsk was obviously not ideal. The only other real option to get back to Yekaterinburg was by train, but even if there was a train going that day, it would take a minimum of 3 days to get there. So I was really stuck, and I didn't really have any options I could think of. I thought perhaps I could fly to Moscow, and then the Moscow-Yekaterinburg route was a bit more reliable, but all tickets to Moscow had sold out. There was nothing available. And I literally sat there really trying to figure out what to do. And there was on the wall of one of the terminal, there was this huge map of the Soviet Union with all the Aeroflot routes. And I was literally looking at where was possible to fly from Irkutsk to get somewhere closer to Yekaterinburg, and then perhaps I can get a train or something, I don't know. And I came across the city of Chelyabinsk, which is a city about 250 kilometers south of Yekaterinburg. It's known, at least in my head, as a big steel-producing city and a place where there was a huge nuclear accident back in the 1950s. And apart from that, not very much. But I thought if I could get to Chelyabinsk, perhaps I could get a bus from there or something. And so I went and asked if there were any flights to Chelyabinsk. I was told yes, there were. There was one leaving in about 3 hours. Miraculously, it left on time. So I took a taxi into the bus station and asked when was the next bus to Yekaterinburg, thinking I'll get there late in the evening, but all okay. All bus tickets were sold out, and the only way to get back was by taxi. And What I learned was that the Russian mafia had basically bought up everything, and if you wanted to travel between the two cities, the only chance to go was by private taxi. And just outside the bus station were about 50 or 60 ladas. They were all taxis. And I went to the first one and asked what was the price to go to Yekaterinburg, $300, which was completely outrageous. I went to the second one, $300, and I realised obviously the mafia had fixed the prices. So I kind of watched around for 10-15 minutes just to see what the vibe was, and really nothing was happening, no taxis were moving. And at those prices, I'm guessing these guys hadn't moved for like 2, 3, 4 days, even more perhaps, and they obviously had families to feed. And so I went to the next taxi and I just sat in the front seat and I said, I want to go to Yekaterinburg, I've got $50, we're leaving now with no discussion. If you want to, let's go. If you don't want to, that's fine, but you've got 10 seconds to decide. And he sort of looked at me a bit hesitantly, and I started to open the door to leave the passenger seat, and he said, "Davai," like that, "Поехали," and let's go. And to him, it was worth taking the $50 because who knows when the last time he'd actually had a ride. And so I managed to get back, and when I got back to the office on Monday morning, I told the story to all the drivers in the office, all the Russian guys, and I asked them to guess how much they thought I paid for the taxi. And they were all going $300, $400, $500. Perhaps you're a foreigner, they would have ripped you off completely. And I got a lot of like office respect for the fact that I managed to get there for 50. So the next time you're slightly delayed with your flight, an hour or two, think back to life in the Soviet Union as it was. It was a completely different era. If you'd like to follow the chapters of Around the World in 80 Disasters by video story, please subscribe to the channel. Alternatively, you can buy the book on Amazon, which is available on Kindle or paperback, and I'll put a link in the comments. Thanks for watching.